Please be seated. All I can say is, wow, wow, that's pretty crazy. So at this time, I'd like you to please stand as we set the colors on the stage here. Please rise. Thank you. Please be seated. What a tremendous show to see everybody coming in here today. That was absolutely fantastic. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Harrow. I'm the Director of Fire Services for Minto Fire, Mapleton Fire Rescue, and Wellington North Fire Services, and also a lifetime friend of Dean's. So Dean, I can hear him now in my mind saying, okay, enough of that ceremonial shit. So I'm going to take my hat off so that I can be comfortable. Thank you all today for coming to remember this very special person. I will apologize right now to the front row. Christmas was a little too good to me, so one of my buttons might go flying at any time, so I apologize. Today, is per Dean's request, is a celebration, not a funeral. Dean wanted a day where everyone got together and told stories about their memories, and God knows Dean liked to tell a lot of stories. A quick disclaimer before we get started. Anyone who knew Dean knew what his favorite word was. So there will be a lot of swearing, and probably lots of it, and we apologize in advance. Any stories are reflections of Dean and not necessarily reflect the person that's speaking. And finally, there will be many names used today for Dean. He had a lot of nicknames. Dean, Diener, Wicky, or Pantload are just a few that are applicable today. So now on with the celebration. At this time, I'd like to call upon Dean's brothers and sister, Dan, Dale, Darcy, and Kim, to come forward and speak on behalf of the Wick family.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dan, and the people on the stage behind me are Dale, Darcy, and Kim. We are here to share with you some of our memories of our brother Dean and to celebrate his life. We remember and look back on the happy times we shared with him. He was a fun-loving guy and always enjoyed performing for a crowd. He was not shy and would do almost anything if he thought it would make people laugh at him or with him. We have a large family and enjoy very much getting together at every opportunity as a group. Our father and mother placed a lot of importance on keeping our family close. So after I got married, we were invited to join the rest of the family at home for Christmas dinner. Over the years, as my brothers and sister got married and started their families, they were also back home every Christmas to celebrate the season, catch up on the past events of the year, and reminisce about the older events. The numbers continued to increase, and as of today, we have quite a crowd at our Christmas dinners. And that includes all the children, grandchildren, and our stepmom, Willa. Dean was almost always there to entertain with his humor, his actions, his stories, and his colorful language. If you ever wanted to know where Dean learned his propensity to swear, I can tell you he didn't learn it from home. Of course, there were swear words uttered at home on occasion, but my mother was not a big fan of swearing. And I can tell you that as a fact because my brother Dale and I got caught saying a little limerick in the backyard one day. And before we knew it, Mom was coming out the door with a bar of soap in her hand. And I think we still laugh when we think of her trying to put that soap in our mouth through our clenched teeth. It just didn't happen. Even though Dean was not there with us this Christmas, he was with us in our hearts and our minds, and our memories of him brought us some smiles and some laughter. You might wonder what inspired Dean to pursue the path of fire and EMS. My first memories of him expressing interest was talking with him about a TV show that we watched in the 70s. It was called Emergency, and there were a couple of characters. Some of you older fellows might remember them. Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto, and they were firefighter paramedics on a truck called Squad 54 that responded to all kinds of emergencies, either traumatic or medical. And Dean was very interested in what they were doing. And Kim also remembered a time when Dean was recounting an incident around the dining room table at home while he was still at home, shortly after he joined the fire department in Palmerston. And it was regarding a recovery he had to do on a burn victim in a house fire. And Kim thought to herself, if he can do that and come back for more, then he's got the right stuff. Dean will be remembered for his love of family, for his strength of character, for his strong work ethic, for his ambition and integrity, and his ability to remain calm in the most difficult of situations. He is respected and admired for the life he lived and for what he was able to accomplish in his career. We are proud. We will continue to love and support Kate and her family as they carry on from here. And now I would like to introduce my brother Dale, and he's going to say a few words.
Well, first of all, looking out here and along the back, I'd like to thank you people in uniform. And I'm sure that this doesn't get said enough, but thank you for your service. I was trying to write words down for the past week and figure out what I'd say here today. because Dean meant so much to us. Then last night at 2 a.m., because I was up quite frequently at 2 a.m. trying to figure out what the hell I was going to say, I figured it out. Everyone has their reasons for being here and probably knew Dean as well, or even maybe better than I do. He never did anything half-assed. He either did it or didn't do it, or he was all in. His ambition in life was to serve. As a young lad, Dean was hooked on comic books. Sergeant Rock and Sergeant Fury were his favorites. He literally had boxes of these comics and was so into Army that he vowed when he grew up he was going to join the closest army around. That army just happened to be the Salvation Army in Listowel. Once he found out the Sally Ann's mission was somewhat less than he envisioned, his desire faded. Or did it? After all, he did spend his life in 2 careers that included wearing uniforms, shining boots, wearing helmets, being honored with medals, and had a paramilitary chain of command. His interest in military continued throughout his teens. He read every book on history and World War II that he could get his hands on, watched every movie that he could find on TV, and throughout his life he continued this pattern until he had read all the books on the topic. So what did he do? What else? He started to purchase books in German and using a translation book deciphered them. When it came to the facts surrounding World War II, he knew his shit. That's all in. Dean was always an entertainment at our family gathering. He would always greet us with a smile and his trademark, "G'day, bitches." And whether dressing up in unusual garb or telling jokes or getting down on the floor and playing with the little ones or just telling stories, he was always the life of the party. Pursuing his love for his careers as a firefighter, ambulance attendant, paramedic educator, he really had a thing for Bob Mahood, probably because they were both frontmen in their bands. Dean had a band when he was a kid called the Satellites, and he was the front man. He didn't sing, he just played maracas and tambourine, but Bob was somewhat better than singing than Dean. But his desire, and even he was a trainer in the local hockey teams to patch up the boys and get them back on the ice. He never wavered in his desire to serve fellow human beings. I know he loved his wife, kids, grandkids, family as much as we loved him. So rest in peace, Dean. You will always be remembered and never forgot. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Darcy. It is an honor to reflect on Dean's life as a brother and a friend. Dean was an amazing brother, and we all looked up to, and were proud of his achievements and his honors in his career and life. He was someone we could reach out to with a health issue or just a question. Dean and Kate were a great team. Just ask my girls. He was a fighter who wouldn't back down from any challenge. Although one fight he didn't win was cancer, but believe me, he battled to the end. Dean taught me perseverance. If you believe in something, it can be done. He was a perfect example of that. As a brother, we always imagined playing on the same team. We were able to do that in hockey and football, and we had a blast. School for Dean was, well, if I passed, that's good enough. He had no idea what he wanted to do. Kim brought it to my attention that a guidance counselor told him he wouldn't amount to anything in life, so boy, was he wrong. The boys had already touched on the journey of where he was and where he got to. For me, he joined the ambulance that was his calling and his passion. But for my sister Kim, she believes that passion may have happened after a short joining of the fire department, which Danny had reflected on with the young girl's passing. That maybe was his calling. When Dean joined the paramedic course at Conestoga College, he had one obstacle to conquer. He sucked at math. So I got himself a tutor, and she was a damn good looker at that. Not surprising, though. Dean never accepted good enough, so he learned and excelled at whatever he did, eventually taking the paramedic course at Conestoga College. Dean taught his students with the same passion he lived his life. He refused to sugarcoat anything, no bullshit. They would be prepared to do the job when called on, once out in action. One of his students was his daughter, Carly. He was a dedicated and passionate paramedic. Dean was admired by his nieces and nephews for his infectious personality, who had always made them laugh. He was so proud of his grandkids, his grandsons, so proud of his kids, his grandsons, watching them with hockey or baseball or just hanging out with them. Deaner, Mom and Dad would have been extremely proud of you, how you lived your life and you lived it your way. We're going to miss you, bro, but you will never be forgotten. To Kate, Carly and Mike, Jesse and Alana, Ty and Beckett, I love you guys. And to all of you who have lost loved ones in the past, I can assure you they're in good hands because Diener's on his way. Thank you, and be safe.
Thank you for those memories and those talks. That guidance counselor definitely was wrong, that he wouldn't amount to much. And this room here sure attests to that. So that was not a very good guidance counselor. Next speaker is, we'd like to call Bruce Murray, Dean's brother-in-law. And he's here to speak on behalf of the Murray family.
Whoa, never seen this many people in my life before. Well, I'll tell you, these Wick boys, they described Dean's life pretty well. He meant a lot to everybody. I'm supposed to explain how he fit into our family. The Murray group, or family, or clan, whatever you want to call us, originally there was just Lauren and Jean. Jean's still with us. And then there was four of us, Bruce, the oldest, Gail, Kate, and Scott. Now, we've all got grandchildren and children and grandchildren now. That wouldn't have happened without our spouses. So, so my wife, Carol, she's here. Gail's husband, Sandy's here. Scott's wife, Rhonda. Now, we're a fairly close-knit family. We have, Easter, Mother's Day, Thanksgiving, Christmases, we celebrate them as a family. We also have 2 family reunions every summer that most of us attend. And Dean did his best to come to all our functions. He knew all our families. He knew all the grandchildren. He entertained most of the grandchildren. He just loved kids. He loved life. And he was a dedicated worker, as you all say. So he missed quite a few family things because that was his schedule. He would show up for an hour or two, have lunch, and then change into a uniform, and he'd be gone. But that was Dean. He didn't miss anything if he could help it. And I should be looking at these notes, but I'm kind of just rambling on here. And anybody that knows me, they know that's kind of the way I am. So, yeah, Dean was interested in all our lives. He never talked a whole lot about his business, his paramedics. That was his work. When he was with us, he enjoyed himself. He relaxed. He just wanted to see what everybody else was doing. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man that had cares for everybody. Kate and Dean, their children are the same age pretty well as Gail and Sandy's children, so they were kind of raised as 2 families together for quite a while. They went to little grandma's daycare center till they started going to school, and they were grandma chased them down quite a few times, I think, down the street. But that was then. Later on, Dean liked to relax when he was at home. Kate and Dean and Gail and Sandy, they used to rent cottages and then finally a house up at the beach for a week every summer. Took the kids up when they were young. And that was the best week, I think, of Dean's life all year. He loved the water, the sun, the beach, the barbecues, and a few cold refreshments. For a week, they did pretty good. Carol and I would go up once in a while for one day and stay with them, and we'd maybe go golfing, which wasn't Dean's favorite sport, but he went anyway. And that's where one of his famous golf stories came from. He had one hole, he went to hit the ball as far as he could, and we had to clear a pond. And all we saw was the ball hit a rock, and eventually it landed about 20 yards behind us. So that was one of his favorite stories. For a left-hander, he wasn't too bad, really. But that wasn't his favorite. He liked his hockey and he liked his ball, and he did really well at those sports. He was a good athlete. Oh, there's so much I should say, and I'm not going to. There'll be stories about him here, and you've heard lots already. And there was the one bus trip we went to Toronto years and years ago to watch a football game. And it rained so hard they had to kind of call the game off for a little while. They suspended it. And when we come back out into the stands to watch the game, there was Dean on the field doing the worm. So those are visions you never get out of your head. And in those days, he liked doing that worm. A lot of dances, he did the same thing. So he was an entertainer. There's no doubt he was a great entertainer. And he loved it. He would dress up in anything, and just to get everybody going. He was not shy. He wasn't bashful. He was such a sincere person and so caring. And I'll leave you with one little thing here where we think in our family that maybe Dean learned his love for Scotch, maybe from the Murrays. There was a day where Sandy and him decided they should kind of, after Dad had passed, they should maybe reduce some of the inventory in his bar. And I think they did their fair share that day, and I'm just sorry I wasn't around. I don't know where I was, but they got into his scotch, and I think he probably got a pretty good taste for it then, and he's tasted a lot of different scotches since. And he was a real connoisseur. And he talked Sandy and me into going to a scotch tasting a few years ago down in Waterloo, and we've been going ever since, and we'll be going next month, and we'll be thinking of Dean while we're there. But it was a fundraiser, and it was a great evening, and we all enjoyed it. So I don't want to say Dean was an in-law or an outlaw. He wasn't a brother-in-law or a brother-in-law. He was just a brother to us. He fit into our family seamlessly, and we talked fire department. We talked, Sandy and I were both on the fire department at home, and Dean was in Palmerston. We talked all kinds of things over in those scenarios, but we had a lot in common, and he's going to be dearly missed by our family. Like the Wicks, we just did our Christmas to, and he wasn't there. And that's about all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Throughout the service, we're going to be playing some of Dean's favorite songs that Jesse went through his 3,200 song playlist on his Spotify account to find these. For anybody that wants to download that one, that is Motorhead Till the End. I can tell anyone if they want to, let me know, and I'll give you how to search that. But when we talked to Dean, he said, I'm sorry, Pastor Phil, but he said, I don't want any stinking hymns. I want upbeat music. So that's what we have. So next, I'd like to introduce one of Dean's best friends from high school and throughout his life, Peter Waller, to come forward and say a few words.
Holy Christ. We always say when you go out, you want to play to a full house. Take a look around. Dean meant a lot to a lot of guys. Everybody in here. Kate, Carly, Jesse, the Wick family. We're here today to celebrate with you the life and times of our guy, Dean. Judging by the crowd here today, it's obvious Dean had quite an impact on a lot of people throughout his life. And what a life he had. Now, Jesse and Carly, I'm going to shock the pants off you right now. You may want to cover your ears, but get ready. I met your dad when we played for the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, that's right. Your dad got his start in hockey with the Habs. Now, we were only 3 or 4 at the time, playing in Squirt Minor Hockey League in Palmerston, but that's where it all began. And I think we were placed on the Canadiens roster because our last names alphabetically were at the end of the alphabet. Mark Rundle, where are you, Mark? There he is, back there. His name came a little earlier in the alphabet, and he got stuck with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's been messed up since then. Be nice to him, okay? Dean loved playing hockey and other sports, any sport he could get his hands on. I can't remember how many football games we played together. Mark and I took turns being quarterbacks, and we would throw passes to Dean, and I don't know how he did it, but he would sacrifice his body, and if the ball came within his area code, he would catch it. And then he'd get pounded by some gargantuan defensive linebacker, but he always took a pounding. But he'd be right back there now to let's go. I just want to share a couple of funny short stories. I could be here all day telling stories about Dean. You're right, he absolutely loves to entertain. A couple of funny stories. Dean and I and Mark, we always had a pact when we were teenagers, and namely, the last one not drunk would look after the other two and make sure we all got home. I didn't get saddled with that responsibility very often. Many times Dean and Mark would get me home and they'd take me around to the back of my house. They'd slide open the bedroom window and push me in through the window over top of a desk. I'd land on my head, crash, bang, smash, and my mom and dad's bedroom was at the other end of the house, but they could hear the ruckus going on, and all they say was, oh, Peter's home, don't worry about him. And they come up, and in the morning, they would scrape me up off the floor. That's, I think, a great example of Dean's ability or willingness to look after other people throughout his life. Dean also liked to horse around, and when he'd horse around, he'd play it rough. One time he spotted my snowmobile out in front of Smokey's restaurant. And he took a running leap and tackled the person that was sitting on the machine. But it wasn't me. He thought it was me. and he started wailing on this person and pushing snow into their face. And then he suddenly realized it wasn't me, it was my sister. It gets better. Another time, he and Mark and I had been out, I think we started a little earlier in the day, and they decided they would drop me off relatively early for the evening, but that they would come back and pick me up later on, give me a chance to get cleaned up. And my mother had other ideas. So around 11 or 12 o'clock at night, Dean snuck into our home. My bedroom was at the end of the house, away from everybody else, so he knew where the hell he was going. He'd step over our dog, who was supposed to be a watchdog and never stopped anybody. And into the bedroom he got, and he jumped on this person, thinking it was me again. He's up on top of this person in my bed, just pounding on this guy, slapping the face, what he thought was my face, slapping around. Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. It turned out it was my 75-year-old grandfather. My grandfather was terrified. What the hell's going on? I think the allowable drinking age back then was 13 or 14 years old. Isn't that right, Mark? Yeah, okay. We started, before he acquired his taste for scotch, we always started with something called lemon gin. Anybody had that? Yeah, I don't even think they make it anymore. It was awful, but it worked, and it worked quickly. We got into so much trouble with those beverages. I think Chief Warboys was happy to see us survive and become adults. Darcy, do you remember Chief Warboys? Okay. The other thing I'd like to share with you today, and you've heard a little bit of it from the others, I got a call a couple of days ago from the Guinness Book of World Records. I don't know how they do this, but they determined that in Dean's 68 years, he dropped 223,380 F-bombs. And they said that they think that's a record that's going to stand for many years. In fact, the last words he said to me a couple of weeks ago had a perfectly delivered F-bomb, and I'm not going to repeat it. There may be sensitive ears here, but it was perfect. It was the last sentence he said to me, and it made me laugh, which is, I think, what he was trying to do, and I'll never forget it. I'm not going to bore you with a whole bunch of other stories, and there are many. Dean had an amazing career with the EMT teams and the fire departments, judging by the gang that's here today. He got tremendous satisfaction getting to help people. He wanted to do it and do it right. He continued to teach other EMTs how to do it right. Most people think about retiring when they hit 65. Let's start, we hit 60, let's start slowing up. 65, okay, that's it, I'm done. Not Dean. He still had more to give and more to share with others. I'm going to close with a quote that I heard many years ago by a guy by the name of Hunter Thompson. And it goes like this, and I think it describes Dean to a T. Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly yelling, "Wow, what a ride." Now, my buddy Mark, he corrected me, and he said, if Dean was talking, he would have said, "Wow, what a fucking ride." That's the Dean we love. Gonna miss you, big guy.
Always think about the days gone by. childhood I saw hills and sky, but I'm not the simple-minded boy I used to be. No, I learned to picture life and its reality. I found after all the searching, life was only what I made it. After all the searching for new games to play, I found after all the searching, life was only what I made it. After all the searching for new game to play, I live my life away. Saw a dragon shake the theater walls, while the steeple bell rang out in anguish calls. And I turned my eyes to see a bird fly overhead, and I dreamt its wings of freedom could be mine instead. And I found after all the dreaming, life was only what I made. After all the dreaming, for the games to play. Oh, after all the dreaming, life was only what I made it. After all the dreaming of new games to play, I drink my life away. People, after all the searching, life was only what I made it. After all the searching for the game to play, after all the searching, life was only how you take it. After all the searching for new game to play, I live my life away. Love you all, and living on, live that life away. And no, nothing
That was Frankie Miller, You Don't Need to Laugh. Kind of feel like a DJ up here sometimes, but. Next, I'd like to introduce Stephen Dewar, the Chief of Guelph Wellington Paramedic Services, to say a few words.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Dewar, and I am the Chief of Guelph Wellington Paramedic Services, where one of the services where Dean chose to work and help people, and I'm so glad that he did. In preparing for today, I asked some of our people for some anecdotes, stories involving Dean. People told me that the stories they had were not appropriate for this venue. I don't know what that means, but way to go, Dean. For those of you in fire service, well, some of my friends have told me that there's a motto, unofficial motto for fire service, which is that it's 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. And in the paramedic system, it's exactly the opposite. We have new medical protocols and treatments and all of the kind of progress that's been made in medicine, and we're told, get out there and enact it in the pre-hospital field with no experience or knowledge on how to do that. So that's where Dean was such a big part of our service. in our service in Guelph Wellington, we have a large number of people that are fairly new to the profession, and again, eager and happy to help, but with very little experience. We needed somebody with the experience and knowledge and the how-to. But it's more than that knowledge and experience. It's also the ability to relate, to share the knowledge in a peer-to-peer relationship. That's why Dean had so many why he was so impactful, and how he had those experiences that we can't talk about today, but maybe they involved Halloween and Scotch or both. Dean came by that experience honestly. When he graduated from the ambulance and emergency care program, we didn't have defibrillators or symptom relief drugs or other than oxygen. In those days, only a physician could defibrillate, not something they could delegate to a nurse, much less a paramedic. The skills that were honed in those days were the extensive history taking and then providing psychological first aid and then advocating for our patients on entry into the healthcare system. And that was an excellent background on which to add the skills, therapies, and treatments that we have added since. Dean grew with the development of the paramedic profession. He was a pioneer in the provincial ACP OPAS program, and he amassed so much experience and so much history. Everyone knew that Dean was an amazing paramedic. Nothing caught him off guard. When he came back to our area from Toronto, everyone wanted to work with him and be like him. He inspired people to want to be a paramedic, and he inspired those in the field to be better. Of those that he inspired, we know that he was most proud of having Carly follow him into the profession. That pride was so evident. Carly, he was so happy to have you as one of his peers. To the knowledge he shared, some of those pearls were known as the Diener tricks. Paramedics know the secrets that he shared of starting IVs, intubations, and it's not unusual around our service to have people say, you don't know how to interpret a 12-lead ECG until you've heard Dean explain it to you. Or I once saw Dean do it this way. Our profession will continue to develop and grow as our own history and traditions develop. I believe that Dean will continue to be a part of that history and tradition. I expect that in the future it will not be unusual to hear people refer to how Dean did things and the Dean tricks and what Dean taught me. He will not be forgotten in our paramedic profession. For Beckett and Ty, if you ever wonder years from now if anyone even remembers Dean, or whether his work as a paramedic was important in what he did, how he helped people, I want you to rest assured he was making a difference in someone's life every day, his patients, his co-workers, and all of us. He's what we all aspire to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, Dean's growing with the paramedic service reminded me of a quick story. I was a paramedic student, and Dean was my teacher, of course, as he was pretty much everybody in this crowd. And the KW ambulance at that time, the KW ambulance was short a hockey player, so he said, come play hockey, Harrow. I said, okay. So we piled in a van, went down to York Region, somewhere down there, I can't remember, and Randy Pruse was driving. And he was our driver, which all you older KW medics would know how good that idea that was at the time. But we were on our way home from hockey, and we sucked at hockey, but we did really well at drinking. And we're coming up to an intersection, and Randy hollered out, oh my goodness, he says, somebody was just hit. And we all look out, and here's this poor lady that was across the street was hit by a car. So I'm a student, and I'm just kind of hanging back. They all pile out of the van, and they're down there. And Dean's down the head, holding the head. The other guys are doing spinal mobilization, and thank goodness to this day, a paramedic crew was the first one on scene. They come up and they get down there like, hey, what's going on? And all the senior KW medics are saying, they got this. And the guy leans down and goes, I think she's been drinking. And Dean goes, no, that's not. He says, it's okay. And the paramedic goes, what are you guys? He said, well, we're a bunch of paramedics from Kitchener. Explain it. He says, yeah, we just left the hockey tournament. Oh, you're at the hockey tournament. How about you guys jump in the tram and get out of here before the police get here? That would be a good idea. We'll take it from here. But it was just one of my first memories with the ambulance. Next, I'd like to call upon John Riches, the Chief of the Regional Waterloo Paramedic Services.
Holy crap. Morning, everybody. Before I get started, and I probably should have given this out before everybody spoke, I was told swearing was okay today, so I'm going to swear a fucking lot, okay? And so I have a swear jar here, which we know Dean loved or hated, depending on your perspective. And I'm going to donate right now. And if I need more, Ty and Beckett, that's on you to tell me I need to put more on, okay? Anybody else is welcome to donate there. So normally when I speak, I write bullet points down and I kind of go off the cuff and ad lib, which frustrated Dean to no end at CME when he was running CME for us, because we would do this chat where myself or the deputies would come down and give staff an update on what was going on, and Dean was like, "You got 35 minutes." And I never stayed under 35 minutes. But today, in honor of Dean, I actually did write a speech so I could stay on my 10 minutes, just so you know, which he'd go, "Oh, finally, now you've fucking done that, have you?" And I would also like to say that these are not just my words. This is where I get emotional. Thank God for tissue. These are the words of my staff and many people who I've listened to over the last few weeks, and I've laughed with over the last few weeks as they share stories. And trying to decide what to include in my remarks has not been an easy task, as there are so many stories shared by our staff, and more than one are definitely not appropriate to be shared publicly, and many are laced with profanity, which is why I brought the swear jar. And then I thought, well, is it okay to swear? You're going to see a swearing theme in this. Is it okay to swear at this event? And then I thought, it's fucking Dean. Of course it's okay. So that's 3, right? I'm at 3? We good? Okay. So Kate, Carly, Jesse, Alana, Mike, Ty, and Beckett, the entire Wick and Murray clans, you have our deepest condolences from everyone at our service. Like others before me, we are here for you. This is why I write 20-point font, so I can take my glasses off when I start crying. We are here for you, and I promise you that Dean's contribution and legacy to paramedicine will never be forgotten. An indicator of this legacy includes the number of people in attendance today, as well as the number of Waterloo staff that changed their plans and are working on an ambulance today so that others could be here. And that was, in many of those cases, they reached out to me and said, it would be my wish to honor Dean by working today, which I think he would find really appropriate. We also received offers of assistance from paramedic services across the province to cover the region of Waterloo today so that we could be here. And I had offers from as far away as Simcoe County, Durham region, obviously Peel, Halton, others. And at this moment, there are 11 ambulances from 7 different communities in the province covering the region of Waterloo so that our people could be here today. And to me, that is just such a testament to what Dean meant to everybody in our profession. I promise I'll get to the funny parts. As many know, I joined the Region of Waterloo team 2 years ago, and it was a little daunting at first to trying to get to know everyone and figure out what makes the service tick. What team members were influential? What members did everyone listen to? Or who did people go to when they had a question about patient care or something else? What members were the ones that everyone else tried to be like? And I learned that although we have many amazing paramedics and staff in our service, and a whole bunch of them are here today, the answer to every single one of those questions went back to Dean. He was the very fabric of our service, and he's had an influence on so many of our paramedics, our logistics staff, our training and professional practice teams, and our leadership group. On a personal note, when it was needed, Dean would ask for a couple of minutes of my time. He usually would do it when nobody else was looking, and he'd share with me his advice or his point of view, and this is something that I will always treasure. Dean was more than just a colleague. Over the last number of weeks, as you've heard today, a lot of people have been sharing some amazing stories, and I've heard some amazing adjectives and terms to describe Dean, and so many stories. I did say that most can't be shared publicly, but I'm going to share a few. In terms of how he was described, many describe him as a friend, always ready with a smile, a helping hand, or a word of encouragement with a few extra curse words for added effect. He was a teammate. He made every training, crowd response team, or truck shift better with his dedication, humor, and unwavering support. He was a legend, the GOAT. He earned respect and admired everyone and the admiration of everyone who had the privilege to work alongside him. He was crafty, ready with a practical joke or ready to engage in friendly competition, such as racing his student from Conestoga College to get to work first for a night shift. Another example of this is a story I'll share that came from one of my staff, is the day that our staff had to test drive the electric vehicles we were getting for our CP program. And so Dean and CJ, one of our other training specialists, were tasked with taking him down to the track to develop some training. They started off slow, each in their own car, trying to figure out how these electric vehicles work. But soon Dean got the hang of it. He took off, flying past CJ with a grin on his face, and of course, as he went by her, he gave her the finger as he went right by. Somehow it seems very appropriate. Dean was also very observant, always watching to ensure students and newer staff were delivering care appropriately, but also observing during homecoming and St. Patrick's Day shift how young people were dressed or not dressed at homecoming, as I said, at those events. He was straightforward and authentic, who knew what he liked and wasn't afraid to tell you exactly how it was. No sugarcoating, no nonsense, but beneath that straightforward exterior, he had a soft spot for those that were keen, dedicated, and wanted to be a great paramedic. He was a leader without being in a position of authority. He was such a leader for us. Everyone listened when Dean spoke, and absolutely everyone learned something when they listened to him. He was, how do I say this? IT challenged. This comes from Sydney, the last student he precepted. She said, I would laugh at his incapabilities surrounding anything tech. Have you seen that man type? Or try to work a cell phone? It was definitely a laughable sight watching his two pointer fingers moving as fast as they could possibly manage. I've heard this from so many staff in the last couple of weeks. He was a 12-lead ECG wizard. So many paramedics have commented on how Dean unlocked an ECG interpretation for them. He was also quite funny when it came to marking 12-lead ECG tests. Like the time he told Donnie Rudstedler, I had to open a second bottle of fucking scotch to mark your test. Where are we at now? 5, 6 maybe? All right. He was a teacher. As many know, a bum knee forced Dean to transition off the road into a training specialist role for us about 6 months before I started here. He wasn't someone who wanted to be in an office environment, and I think everybody here knows that. He wanted to be out there grinding it out with his coworkers. But he took on his new role with that dogged determination he was known for. The technology side of teaching may have caused the odd swear word, but he became the mastermind behind creating and teaching our content, and Dean taught everyone around him how to be a better teacher as well. He made others want to be better. He was a mentor. Whenever someone had an unusual cardiac call, all of his students, or even just paramedics who learned that Dean was the go-to guy for anything dynamic, looked forward to discussing it with them. It was very symbolic of how Dean's passion to teach was everlasting and how he built an immensely respectable reputation over time. Hearing, "Did you print the 12 lead out for Dean?" was commonly heard in the crew room.
He was a cheerleader. He wanted others to be successful and cheered loudly when they were. An example of this is from about 8 or 9 months ago when we hosted our first ever public open house at our North headquarters in Waterloo. The event went very well under the leadership of our admin coordinator, Lisa, and another training specialist, CJ. Dean was right impressed and wanted CJ to know how well he thought it went. So he sent her an email. He thought that email was just going to her. He said, I know you've been as busy as fuck with everything going on. This is on regional email, by the way. I know you've been as busy as fuck with everything going on. I just wanted to tell you, through my lens, the open house was a fucking great success. Well done. I hope you can enjoy a bit of respite before the next group of new hires starts. We have 2 more weeks of CME and then we are done. So call on me anytime you need something. I'll be your bitch. But what made it even more memorable, though, was that he says he accidentally hit reply all and sent it to the entire professional practice and education department as well. Which, on some sober second thought, well, maybe not too sober as I was having a scotch in Dean's honor this week, I now think he may have done on purpose because he wanted everybody to know when he thought something was successful. He was sleepless. People are not sure he ever slept much. Always worked at least 3 jobs, often worked at Conestoga College during the day, and then full night shifts on the road, and many of you worked with him and know that. He was often, how shall I say, naked. Many have shared stories about how he had a fondness for public nudity in water. Climbing and falling off a cliff into Dollars Lake at the Bettles Cottage, naked. Swimming in the North Atlantic in April, naked. Or jumping into the partially frozen Muskoka River in April, naked, only to emerge about 50 feet from where he went in and panicked and paddling like crazy to make it to shore. Another story that someone shared with me is that at the very first concert for an old medic band, he removed his pants in the front row and whipped them around his head, showering the band with his wallet, keys, and about $20 in change. He was supportive. Hearing him pipe up from the corner of the office when one of the ladies in the West Wing was upset, "Who's messing with my bitches?" Or during COVID, when there were groups of the public threatening to barricade the hospitals, he would say, "I'll run them over." More importantly, he was so kind to so many. Since his passing, I've received messages from many, including the Waterloo Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell, Chief Martin from Cambridge Fire, and others, and the consistent word to use to describe Dean was kindness. My admin coordinator, Lisa, describes the moment when she gave him a brand new moulage kit for MCI Day, because Dean's kit was a Tupperware container that was falling apart and everything's everywhere. She put a bow on it. She put his name on it. She said the smile on his face was just awesome. Most important to Dean, and I think to everybody here as well, he was a great paramedic. Always putting others first, his legacy is in the lives he touched, the friendships he built, and the respect he earned from all who knew him. As a medic, he was simply magnificent. One of our staff said he was always on his game with the steadiest of hands and mind. He also knew how to have fun and shenanigans on shift, such as trying to find the oddest foods at the most obnoxious hours. Imagine Dean feigning for his oh-so-glorious baked potato from a good old drive-thru. So Deaner was a lot of things to us. It can be hard to assess the impact someone has on those around them. But as today is a testament, it's not hard to assess the impact of Dean. All of us in fire and paramedicine, his influence on all of us in fire and paramedicine is so significant, and it will last for decades to come. I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. If Dean was your preceptor, please stand up and remain standing. If he was your college teacher, please stand up. If he was your service trainer in either fire or paramedicine, please stand. And finally, if you worked a shift with him in any way, please stand. And finally, if you were coached or mentored in any way by Dean, please stand. To Kate, Carly, the rest of the family, this is such a visible indicator of the impact Dean has had on fire services and paramedic services, both locally and across the province. Thank you. Please be seated. I would like to close my remarks by simply saying thank you. Thank you to Kate, Carly, Jesse, Mike, Alana, Ty, Beckett, the Wick and Murray clans. Thank you for sharing Dean with us. We are all better paramedics or firefighters, and more importantly, better human beings because of Dean. We will take everything he taught us and pay it forward to future generations, because that is the best way we can honor our friend Dean. Take care, everyone, and thanks very much. Am I good? 12. I think I might owe you some money. All right.
It was Christmas Eve, babe, in the drunk tank. An old man said to me, won't see another one. And then he sang a song, the rare old mountain dew. I turned my face away and dreamed about you. Got on a lucky one, came in 18 to 1. I've got a feeling this year's for me and you. So happy Christmas, I love you, baby. I can see a better time when all our dreams come true.
They got cars big as bars, they got rivers of gold. But the windows right through you, it's no place for the old. When you first took my hand on a cold Christmas Eve, you promised me Broadway was waiting for me. You were handsome,
You were pretty queen of New York City.
when the band finished playing, they held out for more. Sinatra was swinging, all the drunks they were singing. We kissed on the corner, then danced through the night. The boys of the NYPD choir were singing, go away, babe. And the bells were ringing out for Christmas Day. You're a bum, you're a punk,
You're an old slut and junk lying there almost dead on a dripping night bed.
you scumbag, you maggot, you cheap, lousy faggot. Happy Christmas, you're ours, I pray God it's our love.
The boys of the NYPD choir still singing, go away, babe. And the bells are ringing out for Christmas Day. I could have been someone.
Well, so could anyone. You took my dreams from me when I first found you.
I kept them with me, babe. I put them with my own. Can't make it all alone. I built my dreams around you. The boys of
bells are ringing out for Christmas Day.
And for our last song of the day, that was the Pogues' Fairy Tales of New York. So when we were doing the agenda and putting the speaker's order, we should not have put me after John, because how do you follow that? So I could just stand up here and say ditto and walk off the stage and it would be good. But here goes. I'm just here to bring you some words on behalf of the fire department and the firefighters side, and as Dean's lifelong friend. As I was putting this together, and I, like John, just like to speak from the hip, put points down and start talking, but I had to summarize my words into a script because I would not be able to follow anything today. So I thought to myself, how do I stand up here in front of this massive crowd of Dean's friends, family, peers, and try to honor the man that is such a legend to all services? Then all of a sudden I can hear this voice in the back of my head telling me to shut the fuck up and get on with the pant load. So here I go. To try and summarize how much a person like Dean Wick meant to me in the entire fire department is something almost impossible. He represented everything in a firefighter, a friend, and to so many people, a mentor that you could imagine. His gentle demeanor, his positive attitude, his passive way to tell you that you screwed up are just a few of the things that he taught me and many others on the department throughout his lifetime. Steven Spielberg once said, "The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves." That is exactly what Dean did. He allowed you to become the person you were meant to be. He just made sure that you did it in the right way and treated the people the way they were supposed to be treated. I'm sure most in this room will agree he is one of the best mentors there was in emergency services, period. When I was first promoted to chief, he was one of the first persons to call me and congratulate me. I was really worried how everyone would react to a young guy becoming chief, and right away his calmness came to me and he said, "Who cares? You know, and I know you do a great job, so just fucking get it done." He will never know what that meant to me in my career. There were so many memorable times at the department with Dean, and as they said, we could go on for hours of stories. He served the Palmerston, then Minto Fire Department for almost 49 years. To put that in perspective, that's longer than a lot of you in this crowd have been alive. He was a young 19-year-old kid doing bodywork at McRae's dealership when then Fire Chief Jack Toner came up to him and said, "You need to join the fire department." Dean thought about it and said, "Sure, why not? I don't have anything else to do." And his love of emergency services began for the next 49 years. So I guess by that, fire can take all the credit for creating such a legend in the emergency world services. So we were the first to recruit him, so nah. Everyone around him quickly learned he was a fantastic firefighter who would back anybody else up. He was fearless, led by example, and always willing to pass on his knowledge. I quickly learned that Dean, though, could just not have nice things. I bought him some new gear years back because his old stuff was expired. I would go past his stall, and his old stuff would still be hanging there. I'd ask him, "Please put your new stuff into service," and he would until I left, and he'd go right back to his old stuff. This went on for a while until I said, "Why on earth don't you want new gear?" His reply was, "It's too shiny and I don't like it." My reply was, "I don't give a fuck. Put the new stuff into service." And he reluctantly did so. But the very next call we had, he went and found some ashes and mud and proceeded to roll in them and then come back to me and said, "There, not so shiny." He then one-upped it, and we were at a fire at a commercial building, and he was up a ladder spraying water on a door. Smoke was pouring out of the second floor door, but he didn't care. He was right there inside spraying water. When I finally called him back and said, come back, we're changing tactics, he came over and said, there, it's really broken in now. The outline of the air pack was singed into his coat, and the front of his helmet, as you can see, was melted. And all I could do was shake his head. You just don't get nice things anymore, Dean. As many of you know in this room, 20 years ago, we started what we call Extrication Day. This is a day where we set up 3 to 4 different scenarios, and we have Conestoga College paramedic students come and train with our fire department. Dean was involved with the college for many years and formed the careers of many of you in this room and countless others around the province. We heard the previous training day was in jeopardy, so we said, hey, we'll do it, and the rest is history. I still remember the first year we did it. We did this large scenario at the parking lot of the Ball Diamond. Dean donated his old car, his beloved blue Ford Taurus, which he affectionately called his clit. He decided that we would flip it on its roof and light it on fire. The other car, we had a young Carly laying out the windshield on the hood, and we had numerous other patients lying on the grass as well as people trapped in the car. I still remember the look on the face of the paramedic student who was first on scene for the scenario. He literally walked over, out of the ambulance, walked over to the scene, looked, jumped back into the ambulance, said, no way I'm doing this one. After some quick coaching by Dean, he went back out. Then our fire guys got there, and their reaction was similar. I can't believe that asshole actually set a car on fire. And Dean was standing there the entire time grinning like a butcher's dog. The years have gone by, and every year the day is a total success thanks to his imagination. I remember this one year, we had finished the day, we're all back at Dean and Kate's for a few drinks and pizza. The college students who came back decided they would challenge Wicky to a plank contest. Well, needless to say, all of them had dropped out at the 8-minute mark, and Dean was still going. And he asked them, have you had enough? Which of course they had. He stood up, drank his beer, and said, there you go, you mofos, I'm tougher now. His ability to teach people is unmatched. We would roll our eyes when it was medical training night at the station. He had so much knowledge it would just overwhelm everyone. But he always got his point across, and everyone knew what the heck they were doing by the end. That's where he got his nickname, God. Everyone at the fire hall called him God, because no one knew more than God, and he was the guru of so many things. In the 90s, when I went to college and he precepted me, the amount of stuff that I learned in 1 year, yes, we were smart enough to get it done in 1 year back then, is unfathomable. He taught me not only to be a good medic, he also taught me how to treat people. So when I got back to the fire hall, and his name was God, he says, well, from now on, you're going to be known as Baby Jesus. He then tried to proceed it to BJ, and I said, no, we're not going there, that's enough of that. But you could tell every time when I went into that Charles Street base in Kitchener, you could immediately tell how respected he was. Everyone enjoyed working with him and would not hesitate to ask him questions. When we came back to the fire hall, Dean was always asked, God this, God that, and he would answer the questions like crazy. I could be up here for hours telling stories of Dean, as everyone said, and what he did for the fire department. There isn't a person there that didn't learn something from him. For years, we kept bugging him to take a captain spot, which he never would. He said, I like being a grunt, and that's what made him happy. After his knee started bothering him, he finally accepted the spot and became a captain. It only took a few months to melt his first helmet, but he finally had the red helmet. His voice of reason around the officers' table was always respected, and his opinions were well thought out. We're definitely going to miss him around the station and the officer ranks. On a personal note, as I mentioned, Dean was my mentor and a really good friend. We did a lot of things I will always remember. From performing skits at the Palmerston Hospital Christmas party, where shots of rum were performed before we performed were mandatory, to bleaching our hair blonde every summer because we just wanted to. We once got too busy telling stories, and we had put the blonde dye or the bleach in our hair, and we maybe drank a little too much that day, and the bleach ended up in our hair for 2.5 hours. My wife, Michelle, came out and told us, you dumbasses, get the bleach out of your hair. So we proceeded to dunk our heads in my 4-month-old son's turtle pool and just kept on drinking. Our hair turned out to be duck fluff yellow, and my scalp itched for 2 weeks, but we had a blast, and I'll never forget that. To sitting around the hall telling the same stories over and over again, but never getting bored of them, to waiting to see what costume Dina would come up with at the next Halloween party, to playing naked ping pong at Christmas parties. I'm still not sure why you guys played naked ping pong, but that's what he did. To just being an absolute friend I could count on at any minute. I'm going to miss you. Kate, Carly, Jesse, Mike, Lana, Beckett, Ty. I don't think we'll ever understand the magnitude of what Dean meant to so many people and how many lives he's made more positive and brighter. Beckett and Ty will ever be influenced by their grandpa and will grow up knowing what a special man he was. I hope from hearing from everyone's perspectives today that seeing this more than impressive turnout, it helps you a little bit in your grieving process. Your husband and dad will never be replaced. There's only going to be ever one Wicky. His legacy will live on for many years to come because he has influenced the lives and successful careers of more than you'll ever know. My family alone has been influenced by his heart and positive attitude, which is spilled down to you, Carly and Jesse. We all loved him, and we will work hard every day to make sure his legacy continues. Mae West was quoted as saying, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." And holy fuck, did Wicky do it right. I'll miss you, my friend. At this time, I'd like to call upon Dean's family to come up and say a few words about their dad and their husband.
You're first. I'm first. Yay. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to Dean's celebration of life. This is his preference, his choice. Typical Dean, go for the party. First and foremost, I'd like to thank friends, family, everyone, including our firefighter and paramedic families, all for supporting us throughout this journey. Emotionally, physically, financially, everyone's been amazing. We're in awe. I mean, awe. Words are not really enough to express our thanks, but they're all we have. So thank you all so much. We live in a wonderful, caring community. Now that said, let's go on to the life of Dean, or my version of Dean. That version did not start until 1978. My husband liked to say that I was too stuck up to talk to him in high school. Reality is, I didn't know him in high school. I didn't meet him until June of 1978. And he was hanging around with a group of friends that I probably hadn't seen until the end, probably the last was the end of high school. I'd been living out west and moved back in end of December of 77. My younger brother, Scott, had got me sucked into working at a cleanup shift at a junior farmer bar at the grand opening of Palmerston Arena. And I'd finished a 3 to 11 shift at the nursing home at Harrison. And was working at this bar and saw this group. They hung around after this cleanup was done, and 3 of us decided to make a good for the rest of the night, and that was kind of Dean and anyway, 3 of us took off for the rest of the night. We traveled 5 miles, I think, and took us all night to do that. We went in various homes to borrow or just take their booze, and yeah, took us that long, but we had fun. But that was June, and I think we were engaged by November and married by the next November. So it must have been a good night. We did a few silly things when we were dating. Some of them were including fire call, walking around town with a huge thermal thing, I think it was called a Bubba, filled with vodka and lemonade. And that was when the old sirens were, walking around town. That was amazing. And it was filled with vodka and lemonade, and we could barely walk, let alone if we had to run. So thank goodness there wasn't any calls that we were, but those were the days when we would be at the end of town. He wouldn't even go to a ball game without the car when he was on call. For now, when we were married, but we would walk at the end of town. But anyway, that was it. We were married in 1979, the same day as the Mississauga Trail derailment. That was all I ever heard for 45 years was, oh, it's a trail. CP freight train carrying hazardous chemicals. 200 people were evacuated that day. That was what he remembered for the day we got married. Carly arrived in 1981, Jesse arrived in 1984. They were busy years, just like everyone else, kids growing up, but those are also the years that Dean went back to school twice in those educational years. As our kids got older, they definitely had a bit of the Diener influence because we seemed to have the gathering home or the party house. But that was okay. We liked having the party house. Carly followed her father's footsteps, met Menno. We had a lovely pair of grandsons, and Ty and Beckett. Jesse did his own thing, continues to do his own thing, but we're okay with that too. I could not be prouder and more grateful for both of my children during all of this, and thankful we've had Menno with us every step of the way. Now, to end this, I think it's only fitting to read you a typical Diener, or in the early years, for me, it was Dino, a card. This is typical of something he would do or draw little pictures, whatnot. Anyway, for me, this should be vodka. So this is a typical poem I would get from him. And as I said, this is a Diener poem, so don't worry about being too sappy. And it's a rap. I'm not rapping. So it's a Valentine's. Unfortunately, I don't have it dated. I'm thinking maybe early 20, maybe early, I don't know. 2000? Okay. Perhaps you will chuckle at my attempts to combine paper and ink. You may even think I'm a little bit of a dink. But I'm really a romantic and quite full of wit when it comes to rapping about Valentine's shit. Now, I won't try to bullshit. This is kind of stuck up. But I won't make excuses. I'll just kind of shut the fuck up. So this year, there's no flowers or silly, mushy cards. So please don't boot me in the nards. So Soxy the dog and Misty the cat said give her some money, she'll be liking that. So this time, my dear, all you get is the loot. For your camera, whatever, I don't give a hoot. So this is okay. I know I need to watch because you only take 3 seconds to go from 0 to biatch. Only kidding. Happy Valentine's Day. Love, Dean.
I was gonna ad lib this, but it's a bad idea. So just a quick quote from the Bible, just to annoy Dean. Ecclesiastes says, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven." That season today is to celebrate the life of a man that is well documented as having lived a full life, a life of purpose, dedicated to serving those around him, and he did it with a very distinct style. Truth be told, Dean and death are 2 words I doubt were ever really considered outside of the past 2 months. In fact, knowing Diener, he thought he was just going to live forever. However, if that moment came, I never contemplated cancer. I was pretty certain Diener was going to go out with a big-ass stroke. A stroke that was caused by Donald Trump's leadership and the subsequent demise of the Western Hemisphere, or by the name of a former boss of the Palmerston Ambulance Service. I'm not going to mention his name. Either scenario caused the man to have a sudden and dramatic spike in his BP, and it was amazing to watch his face glaze over as the tirade would start. Tell me I'm wrong. Like a bunch of you, I met Diener at Conestoga College. For me, it was the fall of 1999 when I started my first semester in the paramedic program. He was part of the OG KWRA Opals medics. For those of you that don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. What it did mean was swagger, piss and vinegar, jumpsuits with the Michener patches, and some of the best advanced care medics in the province. He brought this in his back pocket as an instructor, and he demanded attention to detail as he conducted scenarios, and I think it was the patient care theory course. And of course, the never-ending examples of ECGs. His teaching style, as you've already heard today, was unique, as he fancied himself a bit of a, and I'll say this carefully, a cunning linguist. And he wasn't shy about dropping F-bombs as he saw fit. And if you looked at him sideways, he'd say, "If you think I'm bad, you should hear my wife." But I really, and I mean really, met my father-in-law in the summer of 2001 up at Grumblenut. Brady talked about Dollar Lake a little bit today. I was invited as a newly minted medic and a wet behind the ears Bubba protege up to Bubba's 3-acre island. This is a time that's forever etched in my memory. I haven't told you guys this story, as it featured Diener perched up in a tree like a squirrel, shaving his nether regions, as well as his head. No, he was not sober. We found pictures this week, but this trip also featured Diener as part of an 8-hour epic barge ride down to the Lost Channel Inn. Diener with his freshly bicked head stowed under an insulated orange hunting hat with the flaps down. And Bubba, Kukurik, Frenchie, Pepsi, Freeman, Bazanson, might be missing, but all propped up on this board with a little, I think it was a 9-9 and some coolers, and we went down for some wings. This is the first time that I started to understand the bond and the friendship that these guys had that helped weather the storms. I'm also pretty sure this holiday is permanently etched in my mother's mind, as the boys thought it would be funny to cut Bubba's underwear down into a thong and have him pose out on the dock. So I was still living at home, and my mom still developed the film, you know, at the Walmart or whatever. So they thought that was pretty funny. For all the stories that have been told and will be told about the impact that Dean has had across the province, some of these proudest moments came quietly. He was never a guy for titles. Leadership didn't come with a title in his mind, but whether it was being a part-time medic, a training specialist, or a fire captain, he was happy to help. In fact, you just talked about, he was never interested in being a captain in Minto, and he was almost grumpy about it when he told us that Harold just needed me to step up and help out. We always thought it was just a decision that was made at the Boiner Bar. I'm going to miss the quiet moments. Menno, you got time for a quick scotch? Or watching him arrive halfway through the first period of Ty or Beckett's hockey game, muttering to Carly about your mother and her timing as he'd walk by to take his perch on the rail. That long sigh as Beckett would have one too many toe drags on the blue line, and he still swears that Ty's suspension was bullshit and it was a clean hit. I'm going to miss watching his face light up, talking about Jesse's exploits, like playing at the Horseshoe or getting arrested for just sitting on the curb. I'm going to miss listening to him and Carly and their endless chats, talking about some randomly interesting Code 3 abdominal call. True story. I think it was like 6:30 in the morning. He calls on his way home from work, and there was this, apparently this Code 3 call was interesting. Unique presentation and all, so they had to hash that out before he got home. I'm also going to miss him explaining to Ty and Beckett that he used to be somewhat of a goal scorer back in the day, and that he was still tight, and I still got it. Proving he still had it was building a treehouse for the boys a couple years ago while being crippled with a bum knee. He spent the entire summer building this thing in the backyard on one good leg just to show them his mad carpentry skills from back in the day. Deaner's going to be deeply missed at the annual Wick stock, missed at the Murray Christmas, missed in the West Wing, missed at the fire hall, and most of all by those of us closest to him. One of Thomas Campbell's famous lines is, "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." And Diener wanted us to get together, have a few drinks, and tell a few stories. So to that end, thank you. We've been able to do that today. Jess, you up? I'll say something. Here to support these two bitches here. But it's warming my broken heart to see all of you here, and appreciation and love you showed my father. It warms me, and I appreciate all of you. I love you all, and that's about all I can say right now.
Thank you all for coming. This is probably Dad's worst nightmare, an entire event dedicated to him. If it was optional for him to be up here, that would be okay. The fact that it's focused on him is bad. He's loving this, though. He loved the uniform. This is a big deal. He loves this. The legendary Dean Wick is the reason we're all hanging out together today, and I'll get to him. But I wonder how many of you knew that Jesse and I are actually the spawn of two fabled heroes. The other is the infamous Kate Wick. I'd like to take a moment quickly to acknowledge our Kater. She's one of those mythical creatures that is likely an angel in disguise, constantly giving of herself, generous to no end. Some would say Kater is best known for her storytelling or her trucker's mouth, but as a nurse, she dedicated much of her time and energy to making strangers' days better. Toward the end of her career, that took on new meaning, and she spent her days making strangers' last days better. For this, I'm grateful because it was under Mom's skillful leadership that Jess and I spent one last week with Dad at home. Beck was able to watch Landman with his grandpa. Ty was able to show him how he crushed a Halton kid at his hockey game in a YouTube video. Dad was able to finally enjoy some snugs from his furry daughter, Dally, his faithful companion who rarely left his side once he was home again. I am beyond grateful for the time we had at home. It was a gift, and it's Mom we have to thank for that. To put it simply, Dad didn't deserve this. He spent countless hours, showed unwavering dedication to his community, selfless sacrifice, and exhaustive strength in caring for and watching over humankind. That is the kind of shit that should land you dying on a bed of roses, sipping immaculate scotch and passing on through the pearly gates while naked models held speakers playing your 4,000 song deep Spotify playlist. Unfortunately, because of the wicked strong physical specimen that he was, you're welcome, Diener, we knew it would take one serious man flu to take him down. As it turns out, one of the most rare and aggressive stomach cancers a person can house is what it took. We joked that we knew it was going to have to be one badass son of a bitch to take him out, and that it was. We had 50 short days with Dad from the day I took him to the hospital to December 18th, just over 7 weeks with the most hilarious, wise, charismatic, caring, intelligent, and extraordinary human that we knew. He was the best of us. Diener was not your typical girl dad. I know you're all shocked. He never doted on me. He never catered to me. He never threatened homicide to boys coming through the door. He never read me the riot act about drinking and dating. He treated me like I was capable, like my words held power, and like my presence was meaningful. He set an example of equality, treating his friends, family, and coworkers, male or female, with the same respect and often distasteful humor and wit. I will never forget overhearing Dad talking with John Blythe and Frenchie, I think. I was riding out with him, and I'm pretty sure I was still a teenager. They were razzing Diener about his daughter being around a bunch of ill-mannered medics. 100% the comments were meant to get a rise out of him, but with his usual smooth confidence, I heard him reply, "I'm not worried about her, she can handle this shit." And that sums up my dad as a parent. Not loud and proud, not obsessively boastful or arrogant, no ego, quiet assurance and reassurance, purposeful conversation, room for error, flexible margins, a healthy dose of humility, hilarity, and swear words. He made efforts to meet Jesse and I where we were at, and as we got older, he showed up more. Diener the grandpa, or a grilf, as he referred to himself, was probably my most favorite version of him. Dad, my boys, and their antics, poking and prodding at each other until the verbal lashings turned into hysterical giggles. Enthusiastic commentary from Diener can be heard in the video footage from their hockey games. Video messages mocking George, a nickname Beckett and Dad shared, where Dad can barely contain his laughter at his own jokes. Dad and Ty at Extrication Day every year. Videos of Dad watching diligently as the students and firefighters very carefully extricated Ty, and Dad's massive grin, absolutely in awe of Ty's ability to fake unconsciousness. This version of Diener is where I first saw firm outward praise and maybe a touch of ego. Ty is so good at heart and strong. Beck is so smart and funny. He was crafty. He would build the boys cardboard fortresses for their G.I. Joes. And anyone who strolled past the backyard has seen the marvel that is the treehouse he built, complete with an eagle's nest, lookout, trapdoor, and a rope ladder. He would do anything he could logistically manage to help the boys. One day back in August, Beck was in a bit of a funk. The kids were home by themselves. Meno and I at work. I was feeling massive guilt because I couldn't get poor Beck turned around. I called Dad and asked if he would mind popping over to the house to check in with the lads. He said absolutely and wandered over. A few hours later, I got a text from him saying, "Ty and I got Beck out of his doldrums, nothing a Big Mac can't fix." And that was the shit that made him legendary in my house. He was there when you needed him, and he usually did something that made the kids feel special. Maybe it was even just make them laugh. Their grandma is also very good at this. I have no fear the spoiling won't continue. The knuckle sandwiches, silly nicknames, and video mockery will be missed. Uncle Dean was also a marvel. Not many men on a waiting list for a knee replacement would get down on said decrepit knee to play mini sticks on concrete, or wrestle great nieces and nephews while wearing very tight Christmas-themed leggings. Simply put, he was the coolest. I can't begin to put into words what I know my dad meant to the people that he worked with. Whether you were his partner, his student, a firefighter on his call, or a volunteer fire guy on his crew, when you saw or heard Diener, you felt calm. He had a way of introducing steady composure, and it was contagious. He was a skilled paramedic, but more than that, he was humble and considerate, and maybe you've heard this before. He met people where they were at. From time to time, that met with cuss words and slightly escalated physical force. But for the most part, it meant he strived to make bad days better in whatever way he could. Not just for patients, but for his coworkers and friends too. In doing that, he set an example of what he thought being a paramedic meant. He loved doing the cool shit, this we know, but he also took tremendous pride in relating to his patients. I can remember hearing stories of sandwiches for little Joe. The older regime will be familiar with that reference. Dad slipping into a 24-hour pharmacy for meds, After no patient carry, so a less fortunate family could keep their little person home in the middle of the night. Dina ripping around on a mobility scooter while his partner and his student took care of a patient. I worked with him one night when Jack Fink was near the end of his time, staying at the Knight's Inn. Dad prepared a remarkable bologna sandwich that Woodsy would have been very proud of, and a tea for Jack before we departed. I could go on, but I think if you stick around for drinks, you'll probably hear the really good stuff. The point is, small thoughtful gestures, respect, genuine actions, no drama, meet people where they're at and laugh. Laugh in capital letters. That was my dad. There's so much I want to talk about, and I definitely don't have time. The only ones, as a player and a trainer, extrication days, his Halloween obsession, his love for earth tones and chocolate treats, his belief that he and Doc missed their calling as Navy SEALs. Raise a hand if you've been personally victimized by airborne coins when Dad lost his pants on stage. If you were one of his bitches, I don't know, that's probably half the room. It was his favorite term of endearment. Thank you for being here now and over the past couple of months. The amount of support and love that we have experienced has been very overwhelming, but also incredibly comforting. Dad was explicit about his celebration of life. It was important to him that his family was taken care of first and foremost, and that Waterloo, Guelph, Wellington, and Minto Fire were all represented equally because his love for these three places ran deep. He set an example in all the things he did in life, so I'll leave you with this little saying that I think is a fitting sentiment. Be the thing you love most about the people who are gone. And now, I have a list of thank yous that I hope I can get through. I think I can do it. Short list, I probably shouldn't even attempt it because I'm probably going to miss somebody. In the chaos of the last 2 months, I've kept notes on my phone, partially because I'm just like that, and also because Dad asked me to. Someone would be exceptionally kind or helpful, and he would look at me and like gesture, like do that thing on your phone. I won't go into lengthy explanations for these, just know that we're grateful for all that you've done, whether it was a part of your job or not. Tracy Armstrong, Jess Graff, and Jen Ludy at St. Mary's, Steph Jarmuth and Haley Cookson at Grand River, Kayla Fisk, Tammy Cameron, Zandella, Shelby, and Jeremy from the fifth floor at the Chateau Grand, Dr. Lund, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Valdez, Dr. Chris, friends and family for dropping off food and treats and sending messages of support and love. We've been very well taken care of. Our medic and fire families, we have most definitely felt the warmth of your love and respect for my dad. My dream team of Emily and Sam for our safe travel home, and Armanda, who I'm not sure if she's here, she was our nurse at home, and she gets a special shout out because she walked into Mom and Dad's house and was exactly the personality we needed. She wasn't off-put by our language or our humor, and she did exactly what Dad always tried to do. She met us where we were at. That's it.
Thank you for those amazing words. We're now going to, you're going to receive a shot. At Dean's request, everyone has to do a shot in his memory. Believe it or not. So when someone in uniform comes to hand you something in a little bit, it is legitimate. I know that you sometimes don't trust the uniform, but they are handing you a legitimate shot. Please hold your shot and wait till we give the toast. While we're doing that, we're going to play a video of family pictures that was put together by the family. So
units, 10-3. Cambridge calling ACP paramedic 41254. Cambridge calling ACP paramedic 41254. Cambridge calling ACP paramedic 41254. This is the last call for Region of Waterloo and Wellington paramedic Dean Wick. Dean, you are an outstanding paramedic for over 40 years. You were a teacher, mentor, and friend, and most importantly, a husband, father, grandfather, and brother. You dedicated your life to helping others with compassion and to teaching all of us how to do the same. Your legacy will live on in the lives you saved and the many hearts you touched. Thank you for your service. Rest easy now, Dean. We will take it from here.
Today we gather not only to mourn the loss of Dean Wick, but to also celebrate the incredible life he lived, the wisdom he shared, and the legacy he leaves behind. Dean was not just a mentor, he was a guide, a friend, and a constant source of support for so many of us. His ability to inspire, to teach, and to lift others up was unmatched. He didn't show us how to succeed in our careers or personal lives. He showed us how to live with integrity, compassion, and love. His lessons were never just in words, but in the way he lived every day. The impact he had on all of us will be felt for years to come. We remember his guidance, his warmth, his sense of humor, and the way he made everyone feel seen and valued. He touched so many lives, and his influence will never fade. So let's raise our glasses to Dean, a mentor, a friend, a loved one. May his memory live on in each of us. May we continue to honor him by caring forward the lessons he taught us. To Dean, who made the world a better place simply by being in it, we'll miss you, but we'll never forget you. Cheers. Oh, how did he drink that stuff? If I could have everybody all rise, please. We could have the color party march off the colors. Please be seated. I'd like to end by thanking everybody for being here. This is a tremendous show of support that the family will never forget. And it's a fantastic tribute to Dean. This concludes the formal part of the celebration of life. As per Dean's request, when I last talked to him, is he wanted everybody to stick around. There is a cash bar that's going to open. He was too tight with his money to do an open bar. I honestly think he knew how many people were going to show up, and he thought there's no fucking way I can afford that. So, but I ask you to stick around, and he asked us if we could have a venue where everybody could just share stories and talk about all the good times they had with him. So thank everybody for coming. Please help yourself to the bar and enjoy a light lunch that's going to be served momentarily. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.